This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Thank you for listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, where we discuss all of the news in the world of sports. My name is Ben.
And I'm Anthony.
And we are back here in the studio today, here on a Wednesday. Going to be talking to you about a lot of different things. We'll start with basketball. A lot of news going on within college, as well as the NBA ranks. We're going to start off in college. There's 3 guarantees in life. There's death. There's, of course, taxes. And that the Uconn women are going to be winning because they have just matched their own record for most consecutive wins at 90 with what they did last night. They win against the number 20 ranked team in the nation, the South Florida Bulls. Number 20 in the nation.
Right.
They win 102-37. 102 to 37.
It's pretty good.
This is the 20th ranked team in the nation, the second best team within their own conference, and they beat them by 65.
Yeah, but here's the thing, like the 20th ranked team, like for college basketball, for men's college basketball, there's a lot bigger, pool of talent, right? So if you are the 20th ranked team, or even if you're unranked and you get ranked later in the year, you could do something and you could make it to the tournament and do something there. For, women's college basketball, there's like 5. There's like only a handful of people that actually have a chance. It's like kind of like an NBA season where you only know there's like 5 teams that legitimately have a chance of actually winning anything. And that's pretty much how it's going with this. Like, yeah, you're the 20th ranked team. And I mean, before that, they were 13-1. So, good for them. And then UConn just came with a giant mallet and just squashed it. Like, God.
UConn will be going for a record-setting 91st win on Saturday against SMU, who are 10-5. But you kind of touched on something that I wanted to say, and it's absolutely correct. And this is not a knock on women's sports in general or anything of that nature. But it feels like in women's sports, your team is either really good or it's really bad. There's like no in-between. Like in men's sports, you see a lot of the upsets going on. You see sometimes where the team from the mid-major goes in and upsets a powerhouse team. They get a shooter that gets hot, or even in college, in the NBA, stuff like that. In women's sports, it seems like the good teams dominate everyone, and the bad teams just get literally obliterated. Don't stand a chance. This was literally that right there. This team was 20th in the nation. They're not a pushover. They're a decent squad. They're down 30-6 at the end of the first quarter. They're already out of the game before it even started. I mean, I don't know what else there is to say about them. Gino Auriemma is literally like a GOAT.
Does he get bored? Like, he has to get bored, no. Like, he has to be someone who goes, like, we all understand that, like, you have coaches like Belichick in the pros or Nick Saban who just lost. But you have coaches who are, like, really, really good, and you kind of have to, like, find that motivation. But at least with all those things, they're your peers, or they're equal coaches, they're equal players that, if you have a bad day, like the Patriots don't go undefeated every year, the Crimson Tide, I mean, they just lost the last game, and before that, they think they lost 1 game last year, so they at least have close games, and they'll lose a game or two. For Gino, like you said, 90 in a row. And
he's done this twice now.
And that matches what he did before. And before that, I think they had something like an 87-game win streak or something like that. So basically, in his time there, they lose, probably like 4 times every, 4 years. Maybe they lose 1 a year on average or something like that. So it's basically, and he gets obviously all the best players. It's one of those things like we joke with Calipari. It's like he just does the one and done thing. Well, Gino does like a 4 and done thing with all of the best players.
I've thought this for a while now, but there's a few guys in college sports that I feel like have the easiest job of recruiting players.
Right.
I feel like Saban, he goes there, he goes to a recruit's house, he opens a briefcase where there's 5 championship rings.
Right.
where there's a list of first-round talents and says, do you want to be the next one? Just sign your name on that dotted line right there. For Gino Oriyama, he's got to be having the easiest job out of all of them. I realize he had to rebuild the program and get them to where they are, but as it stands right now, they literally have 2 90-game winning streaks. He's been there. He's 11-0 in championship games, so he's got 11 titles. He can go to the number 1 recruit in the nation and literally just go to her house and say, do you want to win 4 consecutive titles in a row? Do you want to not lose 1 game in college? Just sign your name on that line right there, and I'll make sure it happens. Like, he's got to have the easiest job in all of sports.
See, and the thing is, like, you could talk about Nick Saban and how he just goes in there and he has his 5 championships, and it's like, hey, look, do you want this? The problem with that is you may get somebody who wants to compete, right, for like a starting job, and if you're call it like a 5th string, but like say you're a 5th string running back. We just saw Bo Scarborough, who was a backup running back basically for a lot of the year, and now he gets a chance. And that dude's a brick. Like,
you see what Kirk Cousins put on Twitter?
I love that so much.
He puts like a side-by-side picture of like Bo Scarborough as a sophomore, a 10th grader, and then Kirk Cousins as a junior and 11th grader, and it's like literally a man compared to like a child. And he's like, well, this is why Alabama didn't come calling me, and he goes to Michigan State. So it's kind of funny. But
it's one of the, because Kirk Cousins looks like someone who like you were friends with in high school. Like he looks like someone who kind of like maybe.
It's like that typical high school kid. Scarborough, the picture in 10th grade, looked like he was a sophomore in college.
No, Scarborough looked like he was 3 years into the NFL. Like that dude was cut. Like his arms were like jacked and stuff, and it's just like, oh, that's not fair. Oh,
yeah,
okay.
He's
like I have to tackle you. That's not going to go well for me.
And that's like typical Alabama running back. Look at what they've been doing.
Right.
Eddie Lacy,
Derrick
Trent
Henry.
Richardson, Derrick Henry, Mark Ingram. Now you can throw Scarborough into the mix. Not these flashy little speed backs. These guys that are just going to hit the hole, run you over, pick up 8 yards a carry, and just wear you down all game. And Scarborough's the next one. He did suffer a broken leg in that national title game, so it's a little unfortunate. I felt like when he went down, the game really, really changed because Alabama's offense was not able to execute really without him.
Well, yeah.
But nevertheless, still a great game, still one of the best games I've ever seen.
Yeah, it was a really good game.
Congrats to Clemson. Anyways, back in the college basketball news, we had a new number 1 in the men's side, and it's not going to last very long because the number 1 Baylor Bears lose their first game of the season last night, 89-68 to number 10 West Virginia. It was a road game. They were an underdog on the road. They're really, in my eyes, just number 1 because they hadn't lost all year, but they're still a decent side, still a side that can really challenge come tournament time. Staying in college basketball news, though, Grayson Allen involved in yet another incident involving possible tirades. So last night, Duke plays Florida State. 2 teams within the top 10 matched up. Number 9 Florida State does defeat Duke 88-72. So Duke suffers a 16-point loss. Second game without Coach K since he's been sidelined now with the health issues. But so Duke guard Grayson Allen is his 3rd game back since he had a 1-game suspension for tripping a guy. There was an incident on Saturday where it looks like he may have tripped a player from Boston College. Pauline and I talked about it on Monday's show. But it was not really conclusive as to what was going to happen or not, if it was purpose or not. So nothing happened with that. But now you have another incident, whether it was intentional or not. Grayson Allen, towards the sideline, goes to be trying to get a loose ball. It's on the Florida State side of where the benches are, so the coaches and players are over there. So he's going out to try and chase down the ball. Obviously, his momentum is going forward. Allen is trying to get the ball, which he tries to save it in bounds, but his momentum is pushing him forward. Right in front of a Florida State coach, Allen extends his arms out and does push the coach down, although 3 or 4 people did fall down. He does sort of extend his arms out, but Anthony, was it intentional or not?
Well, no. Oh, okay, look, here's the thing. Everything he's done before, you pretty much can look at it and be like, why'd you do that? Grayson, why'd you do that? Like, he legitimately was tripping people 3, 4, 5 times, right? Like, it's one of those things where it's documented. This, like, because all I did in the originally when I heard this was, like, you see the headline, Grayson Allen shoves a coach, which, when you hear that, your brain goes to, oh, okay, so let's say he was, like, in an out-of-bounds play trying to inbound the ball, and, like, the coach said something, he looked over him, and he shoved him, right? That's kind of what went through my brain. And then I watched the video, and like you said, it's him basically, like, diving out of bounds. And, it's one of those things of, like, I mean, he could have just been like trying not to like spear the dude from his dive or something like that, and just trying to like push off him like that. Like, I'm not going to yell at Grayson Allen for this. Like, you want to talk about him tripping people and everything else like that, fine. Like, I get that, and you're not supposed to do that, and fine. But this was just like some like momentum and just not wanting to like jump into the dude. Like, I'm not going to like yell at him for this. Like, this is like incidental and whatever. Like, no, this is not even close to a thing for me, at least.
For me, it's a little bit of a thing. Giving his history, you kind of have to not give him the benefit of the doubt.
But what do you want him to do? Like, do you want him to just like literally like dive into the dude and like land on him? Like,
he could have tried to slow down his momentum, maybe wrap up the coach, like try to hug him. We see that all the time when you're chasing the sideline, whether you're chasing into a fan or whatever. You try and like slow down your momentum. This one, he really didn't have a chance because he's like diving to hit the ball away. But he clearly extends his arms out, makes contact with the coach, and then shoves away from him. I'm not saying it's intentional. But giving his history, you can't give him the benefit of the doubt. He's literally the boy who cried wolf.
I understand that, and that's fine. And we just want to make stories up at this point about Grayson Allen because we like to jump on Grayson Allen. And this is not to say that it's not deserved, because I understand that he's done this, like I said, like 4 times or whatever. So, you know,
even the one on Saturday against Boston College is
right.
It's not
that's borderline
obvious,
and stuff. Like,
but
yeah,
you can't give him the benefit of the doubt in my eyes.
but those are all him tripping people and basically in the middle of play doing stuff like that. And I guess this is in the middle of play since he's trying to save the ball out of bounds. But like, this is not the same thing.
Maybe he's evolving. He's going from tripping to pushing now.
He just thinks if he does something else, we're not going to see it. Like, we're going to look so much for the tripping stuff that he's doing something with his arms now.
I don't want to say like, oh, he did it intentional, but giving his history, I can't say that it may not be intentional. You know what I mean? And for me, he's just kind of one of those dirty players, a guy I would never want on my team when he goes to the NBA. If he does something like this in the NBA, he's going to get treated like a kid, and he's going to get killed by someone. Imagine doing this to DeMarcus Cousins, who we're going to talk about in a minute. He would just literally Ronda Rousey him.
Well, no, the best thing, because when you said that, like when he does in the pros, like the first thing that popped into my head was someone who was kind of also on this level of hated. He didn't play for Duke. He played for North Carolina, and Tyler Hansborough. Tyler Hansborough is always that dude who, like, the best way I heard someone describe him was he looks like he plays in a wrestling singlet because he's just all elbows and just boxing out and everything else like that. And he did that one time in the pros. I think he was in Indiana. He might have been in Toronto at the time. But he did the thing where, like, you know, you get the thing and you box out and you kind of, like, spreading your arms and everything else out, trying to, like, make sure no one gets near you. And Ron Artest, Meta World Peace, was, like, right there with him. And he's about to yell at him and look back. He's like, oh, I'm sorry. Never mind. You're good. I'm sorry. Like, he just, like, his brain went from, like, who is this to, like, oh, that's you. Oh, okay, never mind. I'm not going to yell at you. And, you know, when you said he does that in the pros, he's going to get, you know, smacked back. I can see Grayson Allen trying to trip someone, like you said, DeMarcus Cousins, Draymond Green, and then, whoo, that's not going to go well.
Yeah, I just can't give him the benefit of the doubt anymore because given his history, he's proven time and time again that he keeps getting involved in these incidents. So, anyways, I don't think the ACC will reprimand him just like they didn't on Monday with the whole trip or non-trip incident against Boston College on Saturday. So, but anyways, I mean, it's just more headlines for us to talk about and more bad sort of publicity for Grayson Allen.
Right.
And lastly, before our break, according to James Ham of CSN California, the Kings are reportedly offering DeMarcus Cousins a $207 million long-term extension, which he plans to sign. Nothing has been confirmed at all, but according to James Ham, he's an insider for the Kings, works for CSN California, does a lot of work with the Kings, so he'd obviously be the guy to talk about. So reportedly, DeMarcus Cousins will be accepting a $207 million extension during the offseason. Good move or bad move for the Kings? If it happens.
Right, if it happens. I mean, if you throw $207 million at anybody, they're probably going to sign it. Assuming that this is all that they do, I don't like it. And the only reason I say, like, I get that DeMarcus is great. I get that he's probably the best big man in the game. That's all well and good. That's fine. Also, that team has nobody. Like, there is no one else on the team that's, like, anywhere near good. And don't give me Rudy Gay because that dude can go from scoring 25 in a game and going, like, 11 to 15 to, like, scoring 7 points next game and going 1 for 15. Like, the dude has good games and has bad games, and he's not your number 2 by any stretch. Considering that the Kings haven't been more than, I think, 33 wins in the entire time that DeMarcus has been on the team, like, I don't know if he's a number one guy. And, like, this isn't to, like, knock DeMarcus. Like, I get the fact that, the people he's been with have been bad, so it's hard to win. But if that's all they're doing, if all they're doing is basically backing up a Brinks truck and saying, here's all the money, have fun, go nuts kind of thing, that's great. But at the same time, like, you need to build other stuff around him because you've seen with DeMarcus is, like, he's not the dude that's here for, losing and being happy about it, right? Like, he legit wants to win, and I respect that. That hasn't happened. So I understand that the CBA and the way the money works is basically let's just get super inflated. And this thing, even though you said it's 4 years, 207, or 5 years, $207 million.
It doesn't necessarily say anything about a year, but I'd guess 5 to 6 years.
Right. So let's say it's 5 years, it's $40 million a year. Okay, fine. Now you got to figure out how to make the rest of that contract or the rest of that salary cap work because you don't have a second person with him. You're in the Western Conference. You have to go against the Warriors. You have to go against the Spurs. You have to go against the Rockets now. The team isn't basically built the way to win, so all you're going to do is basically throw money at a guy who's not as happy. That's not exactly going to make him happy. It'll make him happy financially, but it's not going to make him happy every night when he keeps getting their face caved in.
I get it. For the Kings, it's a move that they absolutely have to do. Right now, they're 9th in the Western Conference, so they're technically vying for a playoff spot, although they're really just getting ready to lose in the first round to probably Golden State.
Right.
But it's a move they absolutely have to make because he's the only thing they have going in the right way. You mentioned that he's the only thing they have, and you're absolutely right. For the Kings, if they lose DeMarcus Cousins, although his off the court and his sort of antics on the court aren't necessarily the best thing, if they lose DeMarcus Cousins, they go from 9th in the West to probably the worst team in the NBA.
But that's the thing. Like, let's say they do that. Let's say they lose DeMarcus Cousins and they go from 9th to worst. Cool. You get a really high draft pick, which they've already had in the past. And it's not like the Kings are anything, not like they're not used to getting those top picks. Like, it's one of those things you're bad with him, you're bad without him. And again, this isn't like to knock DeMarcus. Like, the dude is phenomenal. He's insanely talented, really, really good. But also, like, I guess you have to upgrade around the team around him. And like, I just don't like if you tell me after this that they're going to sign a decent free agent or they're going to trade for, I guess it'd be trading because people aren't going to really sign in Sacramento. If you're going to trade for someone big and do stuff like that, then cool, awesome, let's go, let's do that. But like, I don't know exactly how you're going to do that. Like, it just seems like a weird thing of just like throwing money at somebody because like you don't want them to leave. Like, it's one of those things of like you have DeMarcus Cousins and he is your relevancy, right? And you want so badly to not lose that, kind of like a Hollywood celebrity who just like wants so badly to stay relevant that you're just going to do all these things that like, yeah, keep you relevant, but it doesn't mean you're actually good.
It's a move they have to make because there's no one there, but I guess there is some backlash to it. You signed him for $207 million. You basically just gave up your whole entire salary cap. You mentioned that you're not going to sign any big-name guys. The biggest name the Kings signed this offseason was Aaron Aflalo, who's currently coming off the bench right now as a sixth man.
Right.
So you're not going to bring in the big, flashy free agent because Sacramento is not a good team, and it's not really a big market right now. You're going to Cleveland, you're going to the Warriors, you're going to the Spurs, or you're going to that team that might be on the up and up like Boston, like Toronto.
Right.
So you're not really going to Sacramento. It's a move they had to make, but you eat up all your salary, so you can't bring anyone in. The Kings were maybe thinking about trading DeMarcus Cousins. Those rumors have been going on for years now. With this extension, you have to trade money for money in the NBA. You have to trade 90% of the salary cap. So you're having to trade DeMarcus Cousins. You're having to trade someone or players that's worth at least $35 million a year if he's getting $40 million a year. That's probably not going to happen.
Right.
The Kings literally need to do, just like the Warriors did, just like the Thunder did, strike gold in the NBA draft. You have to draft your superstars, which the Kings have not done because they've been in the lottery the past 12 years.
Yeah.
DeMarcus Cousins has been the only guy they've struck gold on. They had some okay players. Tyreek Evans was all right. But other than that, they haven't really struck gold in the draft. They've been consistently failing.
One of the good ones they had, they let go, and Isaiah Thomas. He wasn't a lottery pick, but he was someone who they took in the draft in the last overall pick. Then he went to Boston. That dude is doing insanely good right now.
Yeah, the Kings obviously did not keep Isaiah Thomas, and he is an all-star in Boston. But DeMarcus Cousins is set to cash out if he does indeed sign this in the offseason. We'll have to wait and see. We'll take our first break of the show. After the break, we're going to talk some college football news. The national championship is over, but we will talk about the final AP Top 25 poll, as well as a certain player from Michigan that is foregoing his senior season and going into the NFL draft. We'll be right back after the break at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
So do-it-all player for Michigan, Jabrill Peppers, whether he's playing defense, offense, special teams, he has decided to forego his senior year and will enter the NFL draft. According to a lot of scouts, he is reportedly set to be the number one safety. He's played some linebacker, some safety, returned kicks, punts. He did a little bit of running and receiving on the offensive side, although probably won't do that in the NFL. But he's scheduled to be playing safety in the NFL. Looks like he might be one of the top one safeties, so it probably means a first-rounder for Peppers. I mean, going out to the draft is definitely the best option. He's going to be a top pick. He's going to earn a lot of money. There's no real need to go back for his senior year. But for me, I just sort of question how good he'll be in the NFL.
I mean, he's excuse me. He's one of those guys that kind of did like a lot of things, like you said. Like he played linebacker, he played safety, did offensive stuff, return kicks, punts. He's one of those like jack of all trades, which is great in college. You know, being able to basically do the high school thing where it's just basically like you play wherever you're needed and wherever you're actually good. And the pros it doesn't work, so he has to basically hone it in, right? He has to basically come into one actual thing that he's really good at, which you're saying like his safety. He's going to be one of the top safeties in the draft. Generally, safeties don't get like a top 10 pick, so maybe somewhere around like the middle of the first round, 15, 16, something like that. And in that case, he's going to go to a team, you know, generally that's a good team because you actually made the playoffs. So, you know, I'm projecting, I don't know, like something around like a Houston kind of thing or whatever they got, right? And, you know, if that's the case, I think he'll do fine. Like, you know, he's somebody who, you know, burst onto the scene this year. He had a fantastic interception to end the game against Penn State. It was one of those. It was a really good interception, and he's somebody who, you know, you've heard about all year. He was in Heisman Trophy, you know, candidacy at one time, you know, but then kind of Lamar Jackson basically put that out of reach. But he's somebody who's absolutely been one of the reasons why Michigan's defense has been really good, and he's somebody who, you know, now that he's gone, you gotta have to adjust a little bit because of all the stuff he's able to do. Now, as far as when he actually gets into the pros, you know, like you said, being a safety, he's got the good height. Like you said, he's 6'1", and he's somebody who, you know, with that kind of thing, the way that kind of Legion of Boom has been in Seattle, he's going to be able to kind of roam around and do stuff like that, kind of Earl Thomas style. And, you know, I mean, whatever he does do well, like you said, whether he's in space, whether he's blitzing for a linebacker, because he does have 4.5, 5 sacks right now in college, so he's, you know, kind of able to do a lot of different things. And if you get him to an actual defensive coordinator that knows what he's doing, he can have a really successful career, and that's all you really would hope in something like that. I think he'll do okay in the pros. I don't know if he'll do as well as he did in college because he got a lot of publicity in college, but, you know, like you said, he's a junior, so he's got all this pub right now. His draft stock probably won't be any higher if he comes back next year, so he might as well go now.
I just sort of question where he necessarily fits. If you look at his college season this year,
right,
he did miss the bowl game, the Orange Bowl against Florida State, because he was out with a hamstring. Mm-hmm. So he played technically 12 games, had 65 tackles. Mm-hmm. So he's right at around 5-6 tackles a game. For a safety, that's maybe a little less than some of the elites. Some of the elites are still getting over 100 tackles a game. Landon Collins had that for the Giants this year. So he's still a little under projection as far as tackles go. And then I'm sort of questioning where he fits. He kind of reminds me of like Deion Buchanan of the Cardinals, someone they drafted as a safety and then transitioned into a linebacker, kind of like that nickel back, because he played a lot of linebacker, he played a little bit of safety, so he's kind of versatile, which is great. He can play all over the field, which is great. But if he doesn't have like a specific position and he doesn't really master that position, then where exactly does he go? Linebacker, safety, is he only in on nickel packages? So I think a team definitely has to have a plan installed for Peppers if they're going to draft him. And I think a lot of that depends on where he goes. Like you mentioned, a good defensive team. I can see him, if he's projected as a late first round, I can see him going to like maybe a team like the Broncos where they already have a couple of good safeties, good cornerbacks, and maybe it can just kind of be like a special player every now and then on special packages. So I think we'll have to wait and see. But Jabrill Peppers is entering the NFL draft. Obviously, in my eyes, it's a good move. And then we'll go into the final college football rankings, the AP Top 25, the postseason AP Top 25. And if there's anything more meaningless than the final AP Top 25, it's probably the preseason poll.
Right.
But I guess it's still some talking points on it. So obviously Clemson is number one. They do receive every first-place vote, being the national champion. Alabama, number two, so they only slide one spot. They're ranked number one all year long until now. Kind of a surprise here, and at number three is USC. They jump up all the way from number 9 to number 3. So they jump 6 spots with that Rose Bowl victory. Number 4 is Washington. Number 5 is Oklahoma, who won the Sugar Bowl. Number 6, Ohio State. And then number 7, Penn State. They lose by 3 on a last-second field goal to USC in that Rose Bowl game, 52-49. Ohio State gets shut out by Clemson 31-0 in the national semifinal game. But yet Ohio State is still above Penn State. Do you have a problem with that?
I mean, the thing is, we always thought that Ohio State was the better team all year. They were always higher in the polls because you have, the higher profile, outlook with the team. Having Urban Meyer on there will do that. Same thing with Michigan and Jim Harbaugh. So I don't, it doesn't really bother me because all this poll really is, honestly,
it's just something for us to talk about.
Well, it's something
literally irrelevant.
A, it's something to talk about, and B, it's just basically putting everybody on notice. Like, hey, these teams, this is how it's going to be next year. Like ranking wise, like we're going to put USC high, we're going to put Washington high, we're going to put Ohio State, Michigan up high. Like we're going to do all these things because even if people on these teams, right, even if someone on Ohio State leaves, even if, like you said, Jabrill Peppers leaves at Michigan, even if people from Penn State leave, all these people leave, we're still going to put these teams high because we saw Sam Darnold at USC and we saw what he did, and they're going to love USC because the, AP poll loves the kind of bigger programs. Because if you look at there, Alabama, USC, Oklahoma, Ohio State, Penn State, Florida State, Michigan, all those teams are in the top 10. Those are like national, like high-ranking powers, and even Clemson over the last few years has been a pretty high-profile team. Like most of the teams in the top 10 are teams that finish well at the end of the year, and they're high, they're, like historic kind of teams. So it's all telling is like, oh yeah, USC next year, they're going to be a top 5 team. Washington, they're going to be a top 5 team because we saw what they did this year. Now maybe they fall off, but it's basically just telling us, the preseason top 25 next year, this is more or less, depending on if, someone just kills it or something like that in recruiting and gets this like ready to go running back, kind of like how Adrian Peterson was, or like Leonard Fournette. This is how the top 25 is going to shake out in the preseason next year.
I have a problem with Ohio State getting above Penn State, and here's why. I realize Penn State does have one more loss than Ohio State, 11-3 as opposed to 11-2 for the Buckeyes. Ohio State lost to Penn State in the regular season. Although it was a little bit of a fluky play, I would still say Ohio State were a better team than Penn State. But given the bowl results, I don't know how you can put a team that got literally shut out 31-0 ahead of Penn State, who lost on a last-second field goal. We're down by 14 in the game. Then we're up by 14 in the fourth quarter. Kind of let it get away. Should have won the game, but obviously lost to who you're ranking as the number 3 team in the nation. I don't know how you can put Ohio State ahead of Penn State in that regard. It's irrelevant. It means nothing. It's the final preseason poll. These rankings have absolutely nothing to do with next year. We can just project. Clemson will probably be high. Alabama will probably be high. USC, Washington. Penn State's full of kids. so they'll be high. Ohio State's always up there. But I don't know how you can put them in the final rankings ahead of Penn State when you got shut out 31-0 and they lost by 3 by a team that you value really highly at number 3.
Okay, but the team that they lost to, and yes, they got the break speed off of them, was the number 1 team in the country. Right?
Yes, but still, I'd much rather have a 52-49 loss to number 3 than a 31-0 loss to number 1.
But that game was kind of like at a certain point in like the second or third quarter, you kind of realize like, oh, okay, Ohio State's not going to win this game. You know, it wasn't like a thing where it was like a close game and everything. Like they were getting blown out, and you could kind of tell them it was kind of like, all right, so this is kind of, can we just leave? I want to leave. Can we be done? I want to be done, kind of thing.
I get it, but to me, it's irrelevant. But to me, I probably would have flip-flopped them. But nevertheless, it doesn't really mean anything. We'll take our last break of the show. After the break, we're going to talk some NFL news. The Raiders are moving on without their offensive coordinator. And Jerry Jones had something to say about his star rookies, Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott, that kind of has Anthony scratching his head. We'll talk about that and more after the break at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
So the Oakland Raiders finished their season obviously at 12-4. They lose last week to the Houston Texans in the playoffs. They finished with the number 6th ranked total offense and 7th in scoring. Obviously, if Derek Carr were not injured for that last game of the year, it would have been a lot higher, but nevertheless, they do finish 6 overall, 7 in scoring, but they are not going to keep Bill Musgrave, who was their offensive coordinator this year. Otherwise, they are turning to promote Todd Downing to their offensive coordinator. For me, I don't think this is a really good move. Why are you going to get rid of a guy who had your offense ranked 6th in the NFL and 7th in scoring, and a guy who seemed to have had a good rapport with Derek Carr, who is your franchise?
Yeah, I don't when you see that, you're like, oh, okay, they fired a coordinator. Cool, the defensive coordinator, because that team wasn't as great defensively as they were offensively. Like, oh, okay, no, he fired the offensive coordinator. Wait, what? But apparently he had a good rapport with the quarterback's coach. They're promoting him, kind of one of those things of just like maybe he feels more comfortable around one guy, so he kind of does something like that. But it's just a really weird thing. Like you said, their offense was great, so it's not his fault, and he'll probably get another job just being like, hey, see how good that offense was? Me. I did that. Hire me somewhere else. I don't think he'll have that much problem finding a job. It's just kind of a weird thing to hear out of the blue like this.
Yes, so Musgrave's contract is expiring, and the Raiders just simply aren't going to offer him a new one. As I said, they're promoting Downing, who was on their team already. So Musgrave was actually the offensive coordinator in Jacksonville with Jack Del Rio in 2003 and 2004. So it's a guy he has some sort of experience with as well. It's kind of questioning and puzzling to me, but nevertheless, I have to see how Todd Downing can do with this Oakland offense next year. I'm sure they'll still be a force to be reckoned with. Good offensive line. Derek Carr's a franchise guy. A couple of good receivers. Latavius Murray and the rest of the backs are pretty solid as well. They really just need to improve that defense, which will still be under control by Ken Norton Jr.,
right,
although they were ranked 26 overall last year in defense. So I would imagine the Raiders probably going to invest a lot of draft picks in the upcoming draft in April in defense, because that's really the one thing they could use more than any.
Yeah.
So Jerry Jones yesterday came out and said something about his 2 star rookies, Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott. Obviously heading into their first playoff game on Sunday against the red-hot Green Bay Packers and Aaron Rodgers, Jones went out and said that because of Dak and Ezekiel's college careers, quote, that makes them equivalent of veteran players. Anthony, you do not agree with this.
That's not how college works, Jerry. That's not how this goes. That's not what that means. Like, I don't he just likes to give weird quotes, right? How old is Jerry?
Circumcising the mosquito.
That was where I was going to go next with that. Yeah. It's one of those things how old is Jerry? 70 or something like that?
I don't know, but he's definitely really old. We'll just stick with that.
He's 74. He's 74. He's 74 years old. He's at this point just the guy who, the Cowboys are, his team for the past, 20 years or something like that? I think probably more than that, probably 25 years. And he is just the guy who has his toy. He likes his toy. His toy is now relevant because for the past, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, they weren't. They were basically 8-8 the whole time. And now the team is good. They're obviously going to keep going to him because he's the GM of the team. He's the owner, but also, inexplicably, he's also the GM of the team. And, he's basically just giving these quotes. And the media is never going to stop this because they basically start hearing it and they're like, wait, what did he say? Jerry, what else you got for me? And he'll give you more stuff. He doesn't care about that. It's just, okay, yes, Ezekiel Elliott was great in college. We saw him
won a national title.
Yes. Also, the people that he played, it's that whole argument of, would Ohio State beat a college team? Would the Alabama Crimson Tide beat the Browns? Okay, but
the answer is no.
Probably not. Also, the reason why is because even though they say, let's say Alabama's defense has 8 pros on there, the Browns have 11 pros. Well, mostly 11 pros, some of them not that good, but it's still one of those things there's a lot more talent in the pros than there is in college. And, Ezekiel Elliott, he's going up against Green Bay. That's not the same thing as what you went, in college. You never played anybody like Clay Matthews. I don't think that ever actually existed. Clay Matthews is a giant Greek god. That didn't exist in college. Even if you played Alabama, that stuff didn't exist. So, Jerry Jones, I love him because he gives insane quotes, and he's just the guy that just wants to, basically get all these stuff out. They're like, no, I think he actually, he did these things in college. He has professional experience. No, Jerry, that's not how that works. That's not what, no. Bad Jerry.
Jerry Jones is putting that much pressure on the 2 reasons that he's going to win or lose this game. He's putting a ton more pressure on Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott because now he's saying that what they did in college makes them equivalent to veteran players. So he's putting that much more pressure on them. If the Cowboys lose on Sunday, it's not going to be because of their offensive line. It's not going to be because of their defense, because we all know that's not good. It's going to be because Dak Prescott does not play well and Ezekiel Elliott does not play well.
Well, who's the scapegoat of the team, right? Because for the past decade, that's been Romo, right? No matter what.
They don't have one this year.
That's what I'm saying. For whatever good or bad they did, that one botch snap by Tony Romo, literally, I think 10 years ago now, 10, 11, 12 years ago, he was always the guy that, even if he threw for 350 yards, it's you missed that one throw in the second quarter, with 10 minutes left. It was always one of those things we just yelled at him for no reason. But who's the guy on that team now? I don't think it's going to be Dak because he's a rookie, and it's not going to be Elliott, and there's no, Dez. Yeah, we'll probably just yell at Dez because we hate Dez. That's probably what we'll honestly do. But, Jerry Jones, yeah, he's putting everybody kind of on blast with this whole thing. He's putting Elliott and Prescott hey, you guys have done this before. It's not anything new to you, but are we going to yell at them, or are we just going to basically go back to Jerry for more insane quotes?
Yeah, he's putting that much more pressure on his 2 reasons he's going to win or lose this game. And I guess maybe I agree with you. I don't think college experience means much. We saw Johnny Manziel tear up Alabama, and we saw what he did in the NFL. So I think maybe Ezekiel Elliott has more to say than Dak Prescott because he is a member of a national championship winning team. He did run for over 200 yards against Alabama.
Right.
So I guess he has maybe a little more of say than maybe Dak Prescott. Prescott at Mississippi State was part of a team that was ranked number 1 at a certain point in the season, but then kind of fell apart after that.
I'll give him this part. I'll give him at least the fact that for someone like Ezekiel Elliott, the pressure of a playoff game isn't going to be as extreme because he's been a national champion and was the highest profile. I'll give him at least that part.
Exactly. That's kind of where I'm going with this, is that he's been in situations, high-pressure situations like this before, so it may not necessarily get to him. And plus, he's just the running back. Prescott is the guy who's going to get all the attention, going to be under center, touching the ball every single play. So he might have a little more pressure on him than Ezekiel Elliott. But I think Jerry Jones is only hurting his team because he's putting more pressure on these guys who are already going to be facing a lot of pressure going into their first playoff game, having not really played in 2 weeks now because they didn't really play against Philly. Ezekiel Elliott didn't play at all, and Prescott took one series.
Right.
And against a team who's absolutely red hot, who is the team they want to probably see least right now in the NFC, in my eyes, in Green Bay. So I think this is a bad move by Jerry Jones. I kind of wish he would just not say anything until Sunday and let the game go and then afterwards say stuff. But this is Jerry Jones after all. He can't keep his mouth shut. He always has to say something. And I think it's a bad move in this regard. I really do. We're going to end the show now, guys. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you took all of our insight great and sort of agree or disagree. You can always comment. We're on Twitter and everything, iTunes. That'll be in the outro so you can get all the links there. My name is Ben.
And I'm Anthony.
And we will be back tomorrow to talk all things sports right here at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Goodbye, guys.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.